You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 120. Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life.
Hello there and welcome. We are so excited to have you here with us today. So on this podcast, we talk a lot about wellness, about well-being, about practices that we can bring into our own lives to help us be well, to thrive, to gain the strategies that we need to help us in our mental and physical health. We talk a lot about how to share these things with our students and help them to thrive as well. Oftentimes when we're talking about mental health and we're talking about self-care and wellness, we kind of tend to think of our mental health. So we're thinking of practices like mindfulness, maybe practices like yoga that combine our physical and mental health. We're talking about doing activities that bring us joy, engaging in social activities that bring us joy. All of these things come to the front of our mind when we're thinking of wellness. But one thing that is so omnipresent that is much less talked about is money. Our finances. Money is so important. It's something that we use to be able to live our lives the way that we want to live it. It is this amazing tool that allows us to get the things that we want. But as I've become an adult, I've been an adult for a while now, but money isn't something that we always talk about. It's kind of taboo. It's kind of swept under the rug. And if we weren't lucky enough to have adults in our lives that helped us to learn about money, oftentimes it wasn't really something that was taught to us in school. So even though money and our finances is so important for our well-being. So we are so excited to bring today's episode to you because that is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about financial literacy, financial well-being, how we can teach this to our students. So I'm very excited. I don't know if you've heard in the last couple of episodes, I've mentioned a couple times now that this year I'm teaching a grade 10 personal finance course. When I found out that I was going to have the opportunity to teach this course, I got super excited because it combines a lot of the things that I really enjoy teaching to my students. And that's really skills that are going to help them thrive and do well in their lives. So as timing always seems to work out, people come into your lives at the perfect time. You get the information and the teacher you need when you're looking for these things. Andrea Ferrero of Pockets Change connected with us at the perfect time when I was just about to start the school year and I had this new course that I was going to be developing on my mind. I was starting from scratch and I needed someone to help pave the way for me and give me a path that I could follow on how to teach financial literacy and how to teach this course in my classroom. So I kind of selfishly wanted to bring Andrea on the podcast just so that I would have the chance to ask her the questions that I wanted to ask. But this conversation and interview is so awesome because, of course, these are all things you're going to be able to share with the kiddos in your life, whether that is your own kids or whether that's in your classroom. You're going to walk away with tools and ideas for how to talk about personal finance with kids, teens, and really anyone in your life. Before we go to the interview, we are so excited to share this week's sponsor, Time Timer. So you guys know that we love Time Timer. This is a physical timer that allows you to visually see time passing. So this is a timer that you can use as a tool in your classroom, or even if you're working from home, you can use it for yourself. When you set the time on this time timer, It looks like a stopwatch, and you turn the dial so that the color covers up the amount of time that you want to set on your timer. Once you press start, that color begins to disappear. So this very visual aspect really helps students to understand time passing and to develop the skills that they need for time management. You have to check out Time Timer. Go to timetimer.com/educalm for more details and to purchase a physical time timer. They have all sorts of sizes, all sorts of colors, and they also have a really great desktop app that I've been using and loving. Go check it out again at timetimer.com/educalm. All right, let's go to today's interview with Andrea Ferrero of Pockets Change. Hello there, Andrea. Welcome to the Balanced Educator Podcast.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here today.
So excited to have you on. We connected at the perfect time because this year I'm going to be teaching a personal finance course. It's a grade 10 elective that's new at my school. And I think that your approach and what you share is so on par with my values and what we talk about here on the Balanced Educator, which is all about wellness. We talk about wellness and different ways of supporting our students so that they can go on to live a great life as they grow older. So to get started, can you introduce yourself and let us know what you do in the world?
Yeah. So I'm very excited that it was so timely and we're coming right back into school. So I have been teaching about finance and working with kids as young as kindergarten all the way through college for the last decade. And what I do with Pockets Change is it's all about making money accessible and really looking at money as a tool for self-care and social justice. So getting beyond the numbers, because money is way more than the numbers. It's about emotions. How do we feel about it? How are we handling it? How are we talking about it? How are we thinking about it? And all the different ways that it plays into our life. So just like you're saying, we can have those skills to thrive and be able to reach the goals that are very personal to us. And that starts at such a young age. So our curriculum and workshops and staff development support that whole spectrum of kindergarten all the way through college.
That's so great. I love how you talked about that money is such an emotional topic. It is. So many people are uncomfortable talking about money. And it's something that I've actually been working on in my own life is being able to just naturally talk about money with friends, with family, with my husband, without it being a touchy subject. So I love your approach because, it seems like you're kind of taking away that scariness and making it really natural, and talking about it as in the form of this is wellness is so important. So I'd love to back up a little bit and just learn, how did life lead you to working with Pockets Change?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually started off as a classroom teacher, and I was teaching on the Navajo Reservation where I grew up in northern Arizona. I was teaching second grade, and it was my first year in the classroom, and I got that whopping first, check for my budget for classroom supplies, and it was $50. And that was to get all the materials. So art supplies, science supplies, math manipulatives. And I'm just sitting there looking at this bear closet and thinking, how am I going to make this money stretch? And the idea that came to me was to create a classroom store with my kids. So we started selling pickles after school, and then eventually that evolved into also selling pencils. And at first it was something that I was really managing, but within a few months, my second graders were managing it, and they were tracking cash flow, and we were making classroom decisions about the supplies we were going to buy with the money that we were making and how to reinvest to get more materials to sell. And it was just such an amazing process of watching the kids take ownership of that and feeling my personal stress of being like, whew, okay, I now have resources that we can bring, but I've also involved my kids in that process. And it made me really passionate about finance education. And that actually led me off the reservation to teaching in California at private camps. And that's where I met my co-founder, Pamela Capellid. She's a certified financial planner. And we really brought together this idea of making money accessible for all kids, because we didn't have those conversations when we were kids. And there's so much shame and silence around money, and we really wanted to dispel that. And that led us to bring in a third partner, Dialect, who's a teaching artist and MC. and look at hip hop pedagogy as a way to dispel exactly what you're talking about. All those, like, feel the uncomfortable feelings, right? But like bust down those myths and those barriers so that we can learn about money. And that's where we really evolved our curriculum and our programming to have hip hop pedagogy be at the core, which is understanding yourself and your self identity, and then looking at building a relationship with others, all of that while you're building financial skills so that it becomes this learning process, which, like, that's wellness, right? It's an ongoing process. It's not just like one check mark and then you're done. So it's really how it's evolved over the last 10 years, now going on 11. When we first started, it was just the three of us. Now we're a larger team and we see thousands of kids every year across the country and the world.
That is so cool. I love the evolution of that process. And I literally got goosebumps when you were talking about creating this store with your grade 2 students and how they were managing it themselves. How empowering as a young person to learn that you have skills that can make you money, that you can then put that money towards things that are important to you. And building that at such a young age is just so cool. I can imagine those kids going off into the world just having their mind open to all the possibilities of ways that they can create wealth in their life and be able to invest in things that they are important to them. And also, I love how you talked about reinvesting the money that they made to be able to make more money. That is business 101, and something that when I started EduCalm with Josiane, we really had to learn a lot about that, budgeting and cash flow and all that stuff. So what a great skill. I love that. And the evolution of your programming sounds really exciting. Can you talk to me more about hip hop pedagogy? I haven't heard of that before. This is new for me.
Yeah, so hip hop pedagogy, I mean, lots of different people have their own ways, just like any education buzzwords, right? We all have our own feeling, thoughts, and like the way that we describe things. But the way that we really express and feel about hip hop pedagogy is it's understanding yourself. So it's finding your pocket, which is part of our name, Pockets Change, finding your pocket so that you can find your your flow with finance. And finding that rhythm for yourself is living into your values and understanding how to express yourself and advocate for yourself in lots of different settings, whether it's when you're going to make a purchase and you're talking to yourself in your head, or whether it's you're getting your first bank account and you want to advocate for yourself to make sure you're not getting charged fees that don't make sense. So really stepping into that understanding of yourself, your emotions, and then being able to express that and advocate. And then the other side of hip hop pedagogy is how do you competitively collaborate with others? And that's just like with my second graders, creating businesses and being able to work with others in a setting where you're communicating openly and you're not seeing the kid next to you or eventually the colleague next to you as a competitor so much as a competitive collaborator, right? We're creating together, we're evolving together. And so that's how we define hip hop pedagogy, is that idea of self-identity and then community collaboration in order to create change for ourselves, for others, and for our communities.
That's so great. I love that it starts with looking at the self and what are your values. Recently, as I said, I've been trying, especially once I learned that I would be teaching this course on personal finance, I started asking my friends about money and talking about our values around money and our feelings around money and our confusions around money. And it's just so interesting because when I was growing up, everyone in my family had the same viewpoints on money and how it should be managed. And then when I got married, my husband had different viewpoints, and it was really interesting for us to like learn from each other that we were kind of both on different sides of the spectrum, and we kind of inched towards each other a little bit more over time and kind of brought strengths out in each other as we talked about money. And then as I'm talking to more people, it's just so interesting to see different perspectives on what money means, if it's easy or difficult to get, whether spending or saving is more important, and all these things. So what is the way that you get students to discover about themselves what is important around money for them? What are their values and what's their identity?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that we go into that. One that I think is like really coming to mind right now, the way that you were describing, especially like how we come together and celebrate our differences, but also find that as a way of like building relationship and communicating about ourselves and what's important to us. So we actually have a 2-question quiz, and we do this with kids as young as 5 and 6 years old to find your money personality. And so once you've taken, and it's on our website, it's just pocketschange.com/personality. Once you've taken that, it kind of shows you your money superpowers, essentially, like what are your tendencies and how do they show up in your life? And when we look at our tendencies, for some of us, it's, that we're thinking more proactively. We want that checklist every day. And for others, we don't want to look at our money every day. That's super stressful. And like, let's talk about it for half an hour and be done. And it's not about either of those being wrong or about changing how we do money. It's about understanding ourselves so that we can lean into our tendencies. And just like you're saying, you found with your husband, like also rely on others' strengths to come together and to get where we want to go. So that's one thing that we do with students to really start to explore your identity with money. And then the other is our spending values. So it's a different way of kind of go beyond budgeting, a different way of creating a spending plan by really focusing on what matters most to you and starting with this idea of like our wants are also needs, right? It's not about taking all of your wants out of your budget. That's why we're focusing on earning money, right? So that we can do some of the things that we love. If you're a sneakerhead, then like have space for sneakers. If you love having arts and crafts, let's create space in your budget for arts and crafts. Like I have iced coffee. And there's even a whole book out called The Latte Factor about how like if I just stop spending money on this coffee, then over time and compound interest. But like, that's not what happens. Like we have limited willpower. And if I don't buy coffee for 2 weeks, I'm going to go to the coffee shop and also buy a Danish. And then I'm going to feel super good. Like I've not bought coffee for 2 weeks. And then I end up walking out of there spending $45. So it's not like I just saved that money and it grew over time. It's about creating space in a budget and having kids practice this already, where you can create space for those things that you value, that feed you emotionally, that make you feel excited about life and that light you up. And then as you're starting to track your money, and that's why we use the spending values, which is just like a quadrant, a matrix. It has the basics up in the top corner, and that's, your rent, your utilities. If you're a kid, maybe it's school supplies, your pencils, things like that, your notebook, your laptop, your internet for all of us right now. Yeah. And then we go down below that as our details, the things like, your sneakers, your art supplies, your music. I love renting movies on Amazon. Like that is all in my details. And then that by starting to track our money and look at it clearly and see where it's going, we can also find this other box, which is the nothing. And that's like the black hole of spending, right? It's the stuff that we forget that we even spent money on. And those things can be like, for me, I live in New York and I used to live in California. When I moved out here, the first month we were here, my fiance and I were looking at our food budget. And I realized I had spent $300 at a Chinese restaurant. I didn't even remember ordering that many times from the Chinese food place. So it was basically like 10 meals out of the course of a month, $300. I'm like, I didn't even remember us like eating the orange chicken, right? It was just like, it was convenient. We were tired. We ordered it. And so once I like realized the money was going there, I was like, well, what could I do with this instead, right? So I actually was able to take $150 of that and put it into savings. But the other $150 I put into getting more Amazon movies and getting pizza with friends and doing stuff that I loved. It's not about getting rid of the stuff that we love. It's about looking at where our money's going so we can put more of it into the things that matter to us.
I love that. So what is your method that you teach to students for kind of so I understand how you create the values matrix. So then what's the method that you teach for kind of sticking to it? Like if I'm saying, okay, in the month I have a $150 budget for Amazon movies, what's the way to kind of track that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways, and that goes back to your money personality, because we all have those tendencies, how we like to track and how we don't. So there's a bunch of free apps out there. So I'll start there. You could use things like if you have an online bank account already for older students and for teachers out there, you could use mint.com, which will track all of your accounts, and it'll give you little notifications by your phone of when you've gone over that $150 budget that you set. I personally, as soon as I get that first little red mark, I'm like, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to stop eating for the month just because I went over the 150, right? So for me, that doesn't work so well. For others, it will. And if you check out your money personality, for those, we call them our complicators that tend to be very task oriented. They love those kind of notifications. If you're a spreadsheet person, if you like color coding your bookcase, like that might be your thing, like that lights you up and that works for you. For others, there's also an app called Fudget, which is a little bit more manual. You actually enter in the amounts as you go. You don't have to have a linked account for that. And that can be really good just for doing a quick check-in of like, is my money, just asking yourself why, right? Kind of like embrace your inner kindergartner. Why did I spend on this? Did it actually matter to me? And that ongoing questioning, kind of like in the moment, I'm holding the extra chapstick in the aisle. Like, why am I getting this? Is it because I lost my chapstick? Do I just need 15 of them? Like we can ask ourselves, and that check in that brief moment, it doesn't mean you don't spend the money on that, but it's just becoming more aware of where it's going. So the tracking process is all about creating that kind of soft gaze on where your money is going. So you're consistently checking in with yourself and figuring out for your tendencies what works. For me, I love spreadsheets. So it's not going to work for me to have an app that sends me notifications, but once every other week, I go into a spreadsheet where I've manually entered my numbers, and that helps me just do a quick check-in, like, oh, the Chinese food budget is going down. That's great. My movie budget, I've been home a lot. I guess that's creeping up a little bit. Maybe I'll keep an eye on that for next time. But that is part of that learning process. And so what we do with students is we really foster a community where you can have these money buddy conversations, where you can, just like you're saying with your friends, you can touch base and say like, oh, what's working for you with your budgeting? What's not working? Because it's not about being right or wrong. And I think that's what's so hard with sometimes when you get a notification from an app, there's a sense of shame sets in, right? Like I went over the 150. I failed. It is over. But it's not about being over, or being bad, or being good. It's just about like, did it go towards something that matters to me? And if not, how can I redirect that in the future? So those are some ways you can start tracking and keep tracking.
I love that. I love the idea of just discovering what it is that like brings you joy, lights you up, like what's worth spending your money on, and creating that questioning process as you're buying things. Is this actually going to support my goals, or is this going to support the things that I actually value? Or am I just buying this chapstick because the branding was really good and I picked it up and got sucked in and I don't actually need it? I think that self-talk and that self-questioning is a really important skill for us to build in our students and in ourselves. I could see teachers that are following the resources and the workshops that you offer learning a lot for themselves as well, because many of us never learned how to manage our money. Most of us probably, I'm sure you probably know some numbers around this, but I feel like as I talk to friends, family, the number one thing that people say once they become an adult is, why didn't I learn about mortgages when I was in school? Like that would have been really helpful.
Yeah, there's one that goes on the internet every tax season that it's like, I'm so glad I learned about Pythagoras, because now that it's Pythagoras season, like that's really helpful. So I think that there is this amazing real world quality, and that's often what we hear from our kids and also teachers, is that it's real. We had a teacher last spring who joined a workshop, and she goes, all right, I thought this was going to be boring, but I was taking more notes than I ever expected. And now I have this totally new way. And I just have some personal questions I'd like to ask about how I can put this into action. So I think what's really amazing is when we have these conversations, when we kind of crack that silence that tends to be around money, or that shame, because I think the other thing that's difficult is when we get to adulthood and we realize we don't know these things, all of that like space of what you don't know, then it feels like, oh, I should know this. And it makes it harder to go and find the information. And it's like, if we didn't learn how to read, we would be like, we need help learning how to read. But there's something about money that we feel like we should have already known it. And that there's so much shame that gets put out there that it becomes hard to kind of dispel that. And so that's a big part of the work that we do in our workshops. And that's where the intergenerational component comes in. That's so powerful, because even when you're, kids talking with your parents and you're getting ready to go to college and you're having these big financial conversations you didn't have before, you butt up against that idea of like the stuff you didn't know. And it's like, suddenly like, what is this loan interest going to look like in 10 years or 20 years? Why didn't we ever figure out what a mortgage was about? What does compound interest even mean? Like, so it's really looking at that as a learning process together and breaking down those boundaries around not talking about money. There are some crazy stats that I will share. They say that a recent study just last year, 12% of teachers, only 12% of teachers in North America, so America and Canada, feel comfortable talking about money with their students. So that in itself, And that comes back to the emotional side of it and feeling capable and confident in talking about it. And it's on the same side with the students and with teachers. We found kids as young as 6 years old. We had a little girl in pigtails walk into a workshop, and she's just staring at her notebook, like kicking her little feet, shuffling in, and pulled her to the side, like, you're having a bad day. What's going on? And she was, this is about money, and I'm bad at money. At 6 years old, she had already decided that she was bad at money. And it's in that moment where we can then start to confront that and say, like, you're not bad at money. Like, maybe you've made some choices with some, with some spending that now you feel like was not the right choice for you. You didn't live into your values. Let's look at how we can do that with the spending values moving forward. And it was great. At the end of the day, she came up and she was just lit up, and she was, I'm really good at spending money, and I'm going to be really good at earning money. And I'm going to sell stickers. And it's like, from there, then we can start talking about saving and all that stuff. But it's this idea of that like internal dialogue that we have as adults. And it starts when we're little kids, when we tell ourselves, like, I'm bad at this. And it's not that we're bad, and it's not that we're stupid or that we're alone. It's just that it's an ongoing learning process. And the more that we come together, the more we can dispel those myths, the more we can challenge those ideas and get to a place where we feel more confident and where we're getting towards the goals that we each have as individuals.
That is so great. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. 6 years old already feeling like I don't understand money. I'm bad at money. But we learn from our parents, right? And as we're saying, most of us don't learn about how to manage money. So whatever our parents say, we kind of soak that in and we develop their beliefs around money as well. And if we're not teaching it in school, we're not giving students the chance to break those, like you said, intergenerational kind of habits and get the chance to see a new way to look at money. So yeah. I'd love to know now, I'm going to be teaching a personal finance course. So the whole course is going to be around this. I'm going to be able to dive deep. But what about teachers that don't have personal finance as even a learning outcome in their curriculum? How do they integrate this into the classroom without it just being, one more thing on the plate? How can it become a natural part of the courses you teach?
Yeah. So the thing that I suggest, and that has been really powerful with the teachers we've worked with, is start with something that you're already lit up about and excited, and look at how you can connect finance, because finance does play into so much of our lives and our world. And so we've had teachers, we had one teacher in Central California that she runs candy sales and like the wrapping paper sales for the school every year. And it's something that she really enjoys. She does it at like an after school club. Her sixth graders, like, they are more excited than I've ever seen kids about like taking those flyers out into the community and raising money for the school. And so she used the finance component of that to start teaching kids about cash flow, to talk about marketing, to talk about communicating and advocating for financial decision making. She wrapped all of those things into time that she already had set aside to be doing something, and used it as a way to kind of like level up and go deeper into the topics that were meaningful to her, and in an activity where she was already building relationship with students and with families in the community. So starting with that like thing that's already lighting you up, that you were already putting time into. We've had social studies teachers that they're going to be teaching about Reconstruction and during the Civil War, and they actually add in a component about looking at just like about teaching about mortgages and home ownership, so that it gives some of these historical moments in time more relevance when you understand the gravity of like what it takes to get to that point of home ownership. And then you go into your social studies unit and you learn about that process and what it meant for people to be losing homes or to be getting a home for the first time. It has more emotional weight. So finding those ways to connect. We've had other teachers that look at fun characters just in book reports and are like, what's their money personality? What financial decisions are they making? Which is amazing. We had a workshop with a group of teenagers, and one of the teenagers was really into comic books and came up and was a little old school. And they're like, okay, so I figured out the money personalities for each of the Ninja Turtles. And I just want to let you know, like, what their financial decision making has been impacted by their personal tendencies. So there's all these different ways where it can be kind of wrapped into the curriculum and embedded to deepen learning in the things that you're already prioritizing within your curriculum, your learning objectives, within your after-school activities. So those are just a few ideas.
Yeah, those are great. I never would have thought of a lot of those ideas. So that's super great for me. The only thing that came to mind was math. Well, okay, how do we integrate this into math? That's a little more obvious, but other subjects don't have to not have math or finance in them. We can definitely integrate them in. So my next question is, teachers are probably going to want to start doing this in their classrooms. So if I'm a teacher that's like, okay, I have no idea where to start. I don't feel comfortable in my financial literacy. I feel like I need work. Where can they start? You have some great resources that you offer. What's step one for a teacher that's new to this?
Yeah, so I'd say step one, on our website at pocketschange.com, we have a toolkit. Check out in the toolkit money personality, spending values. Those are just like open access activities to start to kind of explore your own money personality. And then from there, maybe look at how just to do one activity in the classroom with your kids. And I think that when you have that moment, that light bulb moment with the kids where they are excited about talking about money, that can help foster that sense of like, okay, I'm going to dig a little deeper myself. And then beyond money personalities and spending values, we have a full curriculum that's available. We have it on Teachers Pay Teachers. We also have it available if you just email us at smallchange.com, and we can get you set up and going. And we have a full curriculum map that guides you through different ways you can do pacing across K through 12 and really get into the activities by finding a starting point that works for you and your kids and the interests. So that's where I'd suggest to get started, is find that one activity that feels interesting to you, and then kind of build from there, and be okay with stepping into the uncomfortable conversation. Like it's okay. And we often in our professional development workshops, we ask like, what are you uncomfortable about a kid asking you? Because there's always that like that little question in the back of your head, like, please don't ask that one. Of course, then that's like the kids can tell, right? They're like, so it's being okay with those uncomfortable conversations, those uncomfortable questions, and knowing that it's a learning process for you as a teacher too. If a student asks something that you don't know, hey, we're going to figure that out together. Like that's showing them how to be a learner. If it's sharing, a student asking, what's the biggest money mistake you've ever made? If you don't feel comfortable sharing that, maybe it's a little bit lesser story. Maybe it's a story of when you were 9 and you made a money mistake and you didn't like how that goes. So I think that there's always that process of evolving our practice and being okay with it being a learning experience.
I love that. And I think it's so important what you shared about just start small. Oftentimes as teachers, we feel like, okay, if I'm going to teach something, I have to go all in, but something a little bit is better than nothing. One mindfulness practice is better than no mindfulness practice. One talk about money is better than no talk about money. So even if it's just one little mini lesson or one conversation that you have to get the ball rolling, then just as you do it, you become more comfortable because you're just doing it, and removing those thoughts that you have to be perfect at it, because even a perfect person couldn't be perfect at it because you never know who you have in your classroom, what kind of questions they're going to ask. So just being okay with potentially making mistakes and learning from them, or not knowing all the answers and finding the answers together. That's really great. And I like the idea too, and this kind of sparked creativity for me, as you said, it was kind of just going where when you notice the students getting excited about something, go in that direction. I think that's going to be really helpful for me as I'm teaching this brand new personal finance course where I have to create everything from scratch. I've never taught it before. That instead of, building out this whole year curriculum, I'm going to take it slow and kind of create things as I see what my students are excited about and go in that direction, because that's going to be more fun for them and for me. We'll keep them motivated and me motivated.
Yeah, I love that, because it's a constructive learning process. And I think one of the things that was so neat, and it was just last week with a group of high schoolers here in New York City, we had this whole 45-minute block. We were doing like Ask Me Anything, like learning experience for the summer. And we're just going to talk about earning. And one of the kids was like, but I'm really interested in credit. Can we talk about what it means to have a credit score? What is a credit score? How do you see what your credit score is? When do you get one? What's bad? What's good? And it was just like these little light bulbs popping all over. And suddenly we had 70 different teens like, okay, let's talk about credit. And it's like, all right, let's get into credit. That's where we're going to take some time. And so it's amazing that that buy-in process, right? Of finding what is lighting up the learning in that moment, And then maybe the original thing, it takes up a smaller space, and that's okay as you grow through it together. And I think that's where, as we build learning communities where we're exploring money together, it puts students in the driver's seat where they're bringing topics, then they're more likely to bring other things that they want to explore together and to be part of driving their own learning.
I love that. So another thing that I'm questioning now is, so we have a program for mindfulness in the classroom. And what we find is that we get so much feedback from teachers telling us stories of how students begin teaching mindfulness to their parents. And when their parents are struggling to manage their emotions or, feeling down or whatever it is, they're having a big emotion and they don't have the strategies to manage it, the students or kids will step in and tell their parents, hey, let's do this mindful breathing strategy together to help you calm down or to help you manage your anger. And it's so fun hearing how students, what they learn in school, they're bringing back home. Is there anything that you do or suggest to make it easier for students to kind of bring what they're learning about money back home? Because I could see as a parent, if my child was learning about money and came home and wanted to teach me about money, I'd be like, well, this is great. I can learn more about money. So do you have any ways of kind of doing that, facilitating that, or?
We do. So we have a few. I think the first thing that's so cool is that we've seen a lot of kids, they go home and they have these ideas that they've learned in the classroom or in a workshop, and they take it home, and the parents, because there are so many emotions about money, part of it's like, I'm really excited, I want to know this too. And then part of it can also be some fear of what exactly did you learn about money that you're bringing in? And so the first thing that we always share is it's not about telling kids to go home and tell their parents what they're doing wrong. That's not the goal. It's not about course correcting your family. It's about building a relationship by talking about money. And so to do that, we have resources. We have short videos. We have podcast episodes. We have activity graphic organizers that the kids can take home, and they can actually go through the activity together with their families. And we've done intergenerational workshops as well after school, where we have parents come in and talk with their kids, and the teachers are building community and floating around the room during that, where we've actually sat down with a spending values graphic organizer, and the kids are plotting out the last 5 things that they bought, and the parents are talking about the last 5 things they bought. And it's this chance to talk about, what do I value? What do we value as individuals? What do we value as a family? And build relationship around the decision making that's happening as a family, rather than say oh, well, you shouldn't have done that, right? It's getting some of that shitting on yourself out of there.
Yeah.
and being able to have these moments where you can learn together. I think it's also really amazing, especially for our kids at these transitional points. Our middle schoolers are starting to take more autonomy in their own learning process. Our high schoolers are thinking about, what's the next step when I move out on my own. It creates this bridge moment for parents to talk about the financial side of that. So if you're taking on more autonomy in your life and you're going to have these hobbies that you're driving as a middle schooler on your own, what does the financial decision making look like for that? If you're a teen and you're getting ready to look at higher education or moving out on your own or getting your first job, what does that look like? And having parents be able to have the space to have it be a money buddy conversation, where it's not about being right or wrong. It's not about making a good or bad decision. It's about talking in a vulnerable way and creating these brave spaces where we can say, these are the things I've learned from my own journey. These are the things that I want to do, and have that sharing happen back and forth. And what we found is that when parents have that happen with kids, it builds these really amazing moments where they can come back and say, my kid just advocated for a mischarge on their cell phone bill on their own, and came to me and showed me that they took care of it because it was a mischarge, and whoa.
Wow.
And having those kind of things happen, we definitely don't want to do. And then we always caution our teachers it's about letting our families and our kids know, you're not stupid, you're not wrong, you're not alone. And so your kids aren't bringing this activity sheet home to show you how to budget. They're bringing it home so that you can have these conversations around, what do you guys value as a family, and getting to know what your kid really values now and where that might grow and evolve over time.
That is so wonderful. I'm very excited to dive into all of your resources as I'm going into this school year. I love your approach. It just resonates with me so much. And what you had to share today is just amazing. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. So for a teacher that is like ready to get started, they want to jump in, where should they go?
Yeah, so come onto the website, reach out to us. If you wanted to get started by bringing us out through a virtual workshop or virtual training, you just reach through the programs form. If you're interested in getting the curriculum and just getting started on your own, you can reach out to us at smallchange.com and we'll get you started and going.
Awesome. And we're going to link to everything in our show notes for this episode. So if you're listening to this podcast episode on your phone, you can probably find these links in the show notes, the description of this episode, or you can always go to our website, educalm.com, and find this episode on our podcast page. All right. So Andrea, do you have any last words for our audience before we go?
So I will, and the last thing is, this is the best piece of advice, and this came from one of our students. If I do not have a plan for my money, it will have a plan for me. So when we come together and we have these conversations, we get where we want to be going.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. What a useful interview. I hope you got as many takeaways from this as I did. I can't wait to bring what I've learned into my classroom and share it with my students. To get the show notes for this episode, go to educalm.com/TBE120. So that's educalme.com/TBE as in the Balanced Educator 120. All right. So your exit ticket today is to think about what is important to you. What do you value in your life? And maybe even check out your own personal finances. And are you putting your money towards what's truly important? Or is there too much money going into that black hole that isn't funding the joy that you want to feel in your life and the activities that you truly value? Now, in case you didn't already know this, we have a ready-to-use resource that makes it super easy for you to bring mindfulness and social-emotional learning into your classroom as a daily routine to help your students build their social-emotional toolkit. So that means they're learning skills that help them to manage their emotions, to manage their behavior in a healthy way. So this is helping them with their mental health. It's helping them with their self-regulation. It's helping them to gain a toolbox full of different tools that they can use throughout their lives to help them to thrive. So the way that our EduCalm Classroom program works is that you get audios that you simply have to press play on. They're either 2 or 5 minutes long, so very easy to fit into your school day. You press play, you sit and you listen with your students, and you all get guided through a calming activity that teaches you breathing strategies or helps you to think of what you're grateful for or helps you to build a growth mindset. We have lots of different themes that teach lots of great skills and things that are going to help you and your students to thrive. So you just listen to the audio together, and it helps you all to manage any emotions you might be feeling and to prepare your brains and your bodies for calm and focused learning. We had an evaluation done on our program, and this third-party evaluation demonstrated that doing the EduCalm Classroom practice helps students to be more focused. It helps them to build self-regulation skills. It improves classroom management. It helps teachers to feel more calm and feel more joy. It's just an all-around great, ready-to-use resource that's going to save you time and energy and bring more joy and calm and focus into your classroom. You can start this for free. You can get training on how to use our program, and get the first unit of our program for free by signing up for our free trial. So go to educalm.com and either sign up for the free trial or go ahead and get a membership that's going to give you access to all 10 of our themes. Our library is always growing with new resources, and you are going to have a mindfulness / social emotional learning audio to listen to every day for the full school year. It's all ready for you. So go to educalm.com to check this out. That's EDUCALME. All right, that is all for today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone that you think will get value from it too. Thank you for being a part of this amazing community of mindful educators that are so supportive, so kind, and are just going out and making the world a better place. We appreciate you so much. Have a wonderful week.